Hello and welcome to another video here at Back to Classics. And today we're going to cover the 900 SD Darmah. And one, as you can see here, this is a 1979 Ducati 900 Dharma, and in fact my personal bike, to which I've done a number of upgrades, which we'll talk about later. But first let's get into a little bit of the history behind the Dharma and how it came about. Well, Ducati, if you follow the line of development, started with the 750 GT being the touring bike V-twin. There was later a new model on the market in 1975, which was the 860 GT, and that was replacing the outgoing 750 engine. But the 860 GT, never really caught on. The design by Giugiaro was very angular. You either liked it or you hated it, and that is even still the case to this day, in fact, with that model. So they upgraded the model a few years later, coming with the 900 GTS. But again, it was not the success Ducati had hoped for in those years with more touring-oriented models. So, going back to the drawing board in 1977, back to the drawing board for a new model that was to replace the 860 GTS, or 900 GTS, that it was called back then. The drawing board included engine upgrades, and a big issue with the engines prior to the introduction of the Dharma was the ignition system, which was a own development of Ducati and was very, very troublesome on the 860. But they amended that with the introduction of the Dharma, as the engine got completely, or not completely, but a partially new design, including a Bosch ignition system, which was very good at the time. And it also included for the first time a proper gear shift mechanism on the left side instead of on the right, what the 860 still had, with a crossover shaft moving the gear change from the right to the left. So that was some big improvements in the engine. The bike also received desmodromic valve actuation for the first time on a more touring-oriented model, and the design was totally different to that of the 860 that was available previously. The design was done by Leopoldo Tartarini. It was a known designer for Ducati, as he did the 750 Sport a few years earlier. And he came up with this, very sleek design with a ducktail seat and this stripe going all the way around the bike, as you can see here. The frame is largely based still on that of the 860, with a few minor changes. And further upgrades were made with the instrument cluster that now is from Nippon Denso, and some other minor things. So the whole package meant that it was a nicer bike as it was regarded, more modern, and but still a very good and very user-friendly touring bike, so to speak. It was introduced in 1977. First bikes were all in red with a white stripe. We restored one of those very early ones. We restored many Dharmas over the years, ranging from very early bikes to the later models. But it proved to be quite a popular model, and you could argue that it is the easiest bevel drive Ducati to buy, as there are quite a few on the market, which is, and that is appealing to many people because it is not the most valuable bevel drive twin if you compare it to the super sports or other types, but still it is very user-friendly and a very good start with the getting into bevel drive Ducatis. Over the years there were a few changes, but the basic model stayed the same. Some changes were done to the wheel makes, so the first were introduced with very dangerous speedline wheels, which were known to crack. Later they replaced that with Campagnolo. They went to FPS on later models, but the basic layout of the bike remained the same throughout the production run. Up until the very last of the models, they included a different paint scheme in blue and red. A little bit different than the earlier bikes that were all in either red with a white stripe, or as you can see here, black with gold. There was also a more sporty oriented model based on the Dharma, which was the SSD. Basically the same engine, the same specifications as the standard Dharma, but with a top half fairing and larger carburetors and some other minor details that were changed in order to have a more sportier bike compared to the Dharma. But that really never caught on, because being a sporty bike, one could also buy a Super Sport, which was even more sportier. So the SSD was a bit of a strange bike, so to speak, as to what was the market for it. So the SD models, the standard Dharmas, remained much more popular than that SSD model. Still a very nice bike, obviously, as it is regarded as a true classic these days. So this is my own personal 1979 Ducati 900 SD Darmah. Mostly original, but with some upgrades, some changes, as I like to use this bike actually, as we can see later on in this video. So, well, like I said, it's mostly standard, mostly original, some upgrades, so let's go over them. Most of the upgrades are electronic. In fact, it has a silent hectic electronic ignition system, which is much more modern and digital compared to the originally fitted Bosch ignition system, which is quite good, but has some problems now that these things become 40 years or older. But the wiring itself is completely redone as well. And in the basis we used a Moto Gadget MoBlue unit. Perhaps it goes a little bit too far for this video to actually explain what that does, but it is a sort of a control unit for all the electronics that you have on board on these bikes. So in fact, the whole of the wiring loom and the ignition system's all been modernized, as well as some switches, as well as a set of indicators that are on the end of the handlebars, and a mirror. All Moto Gadget make some very nice products, these guys from Germany. Another upgrade, or another set of upgrades, was done to the engine, which has been rebuilt over the course of last winter. And well, effectively it is a 900 Super Sport specification engine now, with the starter motor removed, but also with the 40mm carburetors fitted, and some extra work done to the heads for increased power output. A little bit of flow for the cylinder head was improved, so it gets a lot of very good power output. So that, well, in fact, is what is done to the engine, and for the rest, like I said, it's mostly original and good to go. Actually, I took this bike on a trip. Just came back, in fact, from a trip through Holland, Belgium, and the northeast of France, up to around the area of Dijon. Where we drove this bike with two good friends of mine for about 2,000 kilometers on the very nice and twisty roads, as we can see later. So with two friends we drove for 2,000 kilometers. We started in here in Bergambacht, went to the Belgian Ardennes, to the town of Bouillon. From Bouillon we drove in the direction of Verdun, where we visited the First World War memorial there. It's very nice and absolutely recommended to visit that at some point if you have the opportunity. And well, from there we drove further south in the direction of Dijon, where we stayed a night, and then we moved back north in the direction of the Ardennes again, stayed in Bastogne again, a nice place if you are interested in the Second World War in that case. A lot of history there. Beautiful roads. Ducati performed very, very well. Other bikes too. Another friend of mine, he drove a 1976 Norton Commando 850. Also, no problems whatsoever. So we had a very, very good trip. Up to the trip of next year, where we are very much looking forward to. So I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed that trip. Thank you very much for watching. Toodle-dokie. See you next time.